All of a sudden, the production manager comes in and puts a set list on the console. And on the top of it, it said Pink Floyd. I'm going, oh, shit.
So you didn't know going into it that
They
was...
didn't tell me who it was.
No way. How old are you at this time?
23, 24 years old.
Les Camacho,
Yo.
thank you for having us at EastWest today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's first start just talking about the studio and just working in this room. You've obviously worked here many times before.
Yeah, I've actually been working in this room since it was cello back in '97. Damn, wow. I'm dating myself.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the? So, are you mostly mixing, producing, recording?
Well, back in the day, I was just engineering.
Yeah.
Now I've been doing production, engineering, mixing all in. Basically, when a band hires me, I'm basically doing everything. I'm the producer, the engineer, the mixer.
Really?
And then sometimes I even do the mastering. In most cases, when it's my projects, I do my own mastering.
Yeah. Nice. Very nice. So let's go back to the beginning of everything. I'm curious where you got your start, because so I obviously, Google search and kind of try and do my homework. I can't find a lot of information about you.
And I like that. I do that on purpose. I like being on the ground on a lot of stuff.
It's just crazy because talking to you for 10 minutes, it's like we're in all these different stories with these huge artists, and I'm like, you obviously have a history and have done a lot of cool things.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious kind of where you got your start. Take me like as far back as you want to go.
Well, I grew up in Miami, and I was a little troublemaker. I was getting in so much trouble, dude. By the time I was 15, I'd been arrested 3 or 4 times. So I was going to end up dead.
That's real trouble. Yeah.
I was going to end up dead or in jail, man. Yeah. And then I had a friend who was actually an engineer who had a studio, and they were producing this all-girl group back in the day.
Yeah.
My mom was at her wit's end, and she's like, get him out of here. And so he took me in the studio. The minute I walked into the studio, I was like, man, this place looks like NASA.
Yeah.
And make a long story short, he goes, okay, you want to learn how to do this stuff? I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, you need to stop fucking around. So I'm going to teach you how to do this. So every day when you come from school, you get out of school, you come here, you do your homework. I'll start teaching you.
Wow.
And by the time I was 15, I was already doing radio spots for the local radio stations and little commercials and stuff. He had taught me enough. And then my first big thing was at 17, I got a call to go and do all the vocal tracking. And it was the tail end of the Two Live Crew, As Nasty As They Want to Be.
Wow.
I was 17, and I got called in for that. And it was at Criteria in Miami. And it was pretty freaking epic.
Wow.
I learned so much, man.
Yeah, what was that? So what was that gig?
It was basically I got called in. For some reason or another, their engineer couldn't make it. He was sick or something. So I got called in, and the studio manager's like, "Oh, you got to just record vocals, one microphone." But usually, what they tell you is not the reality when you walk in the room.
Yeah.
So when I walked in the room, Uncle Luke was at the console sitting. He was banging one of the songs, and I was like, "I'm the engineer." He looked at me. He goes, "You look a little young, bud." I'm like, "I can hang." He goes, "All right, well, let's see what you got." So I was able to hang, and ended up recording vocals, and then. Halfway through the week, he's like, "Oh yeah, we need to drop some 808s down and stuff like that." And man, I got to tell you, recording an 808 to tape back in the day, because we were on analog, 2-inch tape. So getting an 808 to crank through a tape machine and just have those speakers just go boom with no distortion and just hit you in the chest, that was the hardest thing I had to learn to do. It was fucking crazy. But it was cool. It's a new skill you pick up, and it was completely not what you thought it would be.
Yeah.
In a technical sense. So you think, oh, I want this 808 to hit hard. I'm going to pin the needle. It was the opposite.
Really?
Yeah. You had to be at like -3, -6, way down there. And then that 808 would really cut through those speakers. And you're going, holy shit, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big learning thing for me.
Damn. Yeah. So you do that gig, how did it go?
It went well. I was there with them on, like I said, I think it was there for like 2.5, 3 weeks. It was the very tail end of the record.
Yep.
And then it was mixed from there on out, and somebody else mixed it. I don't recall who the mix engineer was, but somebody else took over, and they did that record. And of course, it was one of the most epic hip hop records ever.
Wow.
And not only that, but a quick backstory. The reason that record was so filthy in a way, which is in a good way, was because Luke is a big proponent. Uncle Luke was a big proponent of free speech.
Wow.
And every time they played shows in Miami, they were getting shut down by the sheriffs.
Wow.
So, make a long story short, you can look this up. They took this all the way to the Supreme Court, and they won.
No kidding. You can make a long story long. Feel free. We got time.
It was really cool. So, but at the time, again, I was too young to realize what the fuck was going on. I was
Yeah.
just, I was just doing a record, getting paid very well,
Yeah.
and I didn't know any of the backstory stuff until you get older and you realize this dude did some amazing stuff for free speech.
Wow.
He took the fight to the Supreme Court. Well, like I said, it was just I was too young to understand or even appreciate what was going on and
Yeah.
how big that record was going to be.
Yeah.
At the time I was just 17 years old. Yeah, about 17. And, the booty music thing was coming into Miami and it was becoming a big thing. So I was just like, oh, this is just, I'm working on music. I'm enjoying it. The guys were great. I've lost touch with them and I haven't spoken to any of them, including Uncle Luke, for, man, probably 20 years or more.
Wow.
But it was just looking back now, knowing what I know about music, it's just like, he did a ballsy thing and a good thing.
Yeah. So, okay. So the sheriffs are shutting their shows down. That's for language related?
For language related. Yeah. Because there was no nudity on stage. I went to a couple of shows when they played in South Beach and a couple of places, and there was never anything other than just, the content that there were, the language, but that was about it. And there was just, the sheriffs would come in and literally shut these guys down,
Really?
man.
That's crazy.
And so Uncle Luke's like, you can't tell me what to do for speech. So he took it. And like I said, you can look it up. It went up to the Supreme Court and they won. And, that was like, that's looking back at it, it's like, that was huge for any music person to just take it.
Yeah. So what did they exactly take? Was it basically allowing freedom of speech within the songs?
Yeah. I think the ruling was that it was considered artistic expression and freedom of speech. So the Supreme Court ruled in their favor.
Wow.
And so after that, then the sheriffs couldn't do anything anymore to them. So
and we're talking probably basic stuff like saying the F word or something like that.
Yeah, the P word, and all that stuff, and stuff that we say casually, messing around, and nothing crazy. And then the lyric content was a little dirty, but he knew what he was doing. I didn't know what he was doing, but I think Uncle Luke had a plan, and
that's crazy.
And Uncle Luke probably said, "Yeah, I'm gonna poke the bear."
Yeah, because that's the same time that rock and roll is probably at a similar place.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
everyone's going through the same thing of expressing themselves in a certain way, but then that really wasn't where society was at that time.
No, especially in Miami. In Florida at the time, I think was more conservative. It's more conservative than it is now.
Yeah,
and so they were able to just go, "Now we're doing this."
Wow,
I think that was ballsy as hell, and I never got the chance to tell him how amazing that was. So one of these days I'll probably look him up and go, "Dude, thank you for." I don't know if he probably remembers me or not. It really doesn't matter. But it's like, dude,
that's a pretty wild first gig. To have all that extra stuff on top of you're 17, with a huge artist that's doing crazy things at that time.
But you don't realize that you're 17. You're just like, doop-de-doop-de-doop. I'm pushing faders up and making music and hanging out with a bunch of guys thinking I'm a grown up.
Yeah. So personally at that time, are you feeling like you're finding yourself, or are you like, this is just another gig and I'm getting paid?
No, honestly, at that time I was too stupid. It was just another gig, getting paid, want to get my cool car, So I didn't really start developing that sense of stuff until my mid-20s, when I was already out on tour with bigger bands and working with bigger bands and stuff, and then started picking up the business side of stuff and realizing that, this could be a paycheck, but fuck, I love this.
Yeah.
I love the music. I love to hang with the artists.
Yeah.
Some of them are mad cool. Some of them are just fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, man, when you're in a place like this and you're creating music, whether it becomes huge or not, you just got to enjoy the moment, because if not, it'll pass you by. And you don't realize, like, look at me. I'm just realizing the whole Two Life Crew now, 30 plus years later.
Yeah.
And I'm going, man, I wish I would have had the knowledge I have now to appreciate what was going on in that room at that time. Because they were doing some really avant-garde stuff for hip hop that nobody was doing.
Yeah.
And it was just like, that's freaking cool.
Yeah. So you finish that gig. Does the ball start rolling from there? Yeah,
it really did. From there on out, I went and I started doing live sound, and I started doing front of the house every year when the Bayfront Park Reggae Festival in Miami would kick off. I would go and I started getting my live sound chops going.
Wow. And
first I started in the smaller stages, and I started moving up to the bigger stages. And that was really cool, because you got to see some really great reggae people, man. And they were bringing all these reggae artists from Jamaica, the Bahamas, and you were going, fuck, these guys can play.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
and they were all mad cool. You know,
Yeah.
they were all just super cool dudes. So yeah, I went from hip hop to reggae, and
That's
it's like
crazy.
it's opposite as you can get.
Yeah.
But you know what? The one thing that they have in common,
What's that?
the low end. They
Really?
love their bottom
Yeah.
end, dude. And so I learned how to dial in my bottom end.
Yeah.
You know, and even to this day, when I'm recording even rock bands, I like my kick drum.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it to just hit you in the chest. And
Yep.
you're going, yeah, that feels good.
Oh, yeah. That's
So,
awesome.
that feels good. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So what are the rest of your 20s look like from there?
From there, I went out in '94. Well, tail end of '93. I started touring. I went and started touring with Pink Floyd at front of the house on the Division Bell / Pulse tour. And I was on that for a minute, and that was a lot of fun.
How does that happen? You go from hip hop to reggae to
Yeah.
Pink Floyd. How the fuck does that work?
I got a call from a friend of mine who actually had trained me back in the studio. He had left. And he goes, hey, you know, I got a band in London who's looking for an engineer for a tour they got coming up. You want to audition? I said, yeah, sure. I didn't think I didn't think much about it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I flew out, did the audition, and then I got the gig. And then I was on tour on the Division Bell tour with those guys. And
How do you audition for is it literally band sets up, you're there, and you just
Yeah.
have to make it sound great? Is it
was
as simple as
scary.
that?
Yeah, it was scary.
Yeah.
We were in this big rehearsal place, and stage is set up. And I'm looking around the stage, and by then I knew what was going on, and I'm going, Jesus Christ, there's some money in here. I mean,
Wow.
you get to the front of the house, and it's this massive front of the house with almost as much outboard gear as we have here,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sitting there, and I'm going, "Who's this?" My buddy's saying, "Ah, don't worry about it. You know, just do the audition. You're gonna do, you're gonna sound check with the guys. You're gonna do 5 songs. You're done." I'm like, he goes, "It'll be over in a minute." It's
Yeah.
like pulling a Band-Aid. I'm
Yeah.
like, "All right." And anyways, make a long story short, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, the production manager comes in and puts a set list on the console. And on the top of it said Pink Floyd. I'm going, oh, shit. So, of course, I break into cold sweats.
Yeah.
And I'm going.
So you didn't know going into it that
They
that
didn't
was...
tell me who it was.
No
They
way.
didn't tell me who it was. They're just like, show up. Be there. I'm like, all right. And so I look at the list, and then it says Pink Floyd, and the freaking first song was The Wall. And I'm going, fuck.
And how old are you at this time?
23, 24 years old.
And you're in London,
I'm in London. Yeah.
and it's Pink Floyd, and
And now I'm shitting bricks. So all of a sudden I'm like,
it's fucking
oh
insane.
my God, Pink Floyd. So, I mean, at one point, I found myself grabbing the faders of the console so hard that I was white knuckled. Seriously, because I was so nervous.
Yeah.
But you know what? The guys were the freaking sweetest guys. To this day, I would say that they're the sweetest guys that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Nick, the drummer, just the funniest guy you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And then Rick, the keyboard player, God rest his soul, he passed away. And Rick was just such a gentle soul. Everywhere he saw you, come and hug you, and just like hug you. And David, come on.
Yeah.
One of the greatest guitar players in music ever.
Yeah.
And then from there on out, the rest of the bands. And I mean, I'm still friends with, I still talk to them. I'm very good friends still with Durga McBroom, their background singer, and we do projects together. I bring her in when she's here in LA. She lives in Rome, but when she's here in LA and I'm working on records, I'm like, hey, you want to come in and drop some vocals, backgrounds?
Yeah.
And of course, when I tell artists who's coming in, they're like, holy shit, I'm going to have Durga McBroom on my record?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, she's cool. Don't worry about it.
That's
She'll come
crazy.
in.
And a
she's like,
connection that you made when you're 23 years old.
yeah, and we're
That's
still all
wild.
friends to this day.
That's
we all
crazy.
talk to one another. We don't talk as often as we used to because, people drift apart in this industry.
Yeah.
We're all doing different things. But
take me back to those moments where, because as a 23-year-old kid, I don't know.
from Miami.
Exactly. Yeah, right. In a place you probably had never been.
Never been.
With a band that's larger than life at that point.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, man, it was, looking back at it, it's like touch and go. Because I only have one shot. And the funny thing is, Nick gets on the drums. They'll walk in. Nick sits on the drums. And he says, oi, is my guy here yet? And everybody in the room just looked at me. And I'm going, oh, hi, what's your name, lad? I said, Les. He goes, hi, I'm Nick, David, Rick. I'm like, okay. And they're all very cordial, and he just sat there. And everybody's looking at me, and I'm like, oh, sound check. Kick one. So, he
Start
started
going through it.
Yeah, we start going through the kick one, kick two, snare top. We start doing our thing. And so I sound checked him, sound checked David, and then Rick, and we checked vocals. And then they just stopped, and we're ready. I'm like, okay, let's go. And it was uncomfortable because they were kind of looking at me are you ready? Because we're ready. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm ready. So it was kind of.
Were you ready though, or was it?
Honestly, looking back, no, I was shitting bullets, dude. No, fuck no. Who can ever look? Honestly, who can ever be ready for something like that?
Yeah.
Imagine being 23 years old now.
Yeah.
And being called to do front of the house for the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Or somebody like that.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, at 23, you really don't really have the knowledge that we have now.
Yeah.
Right. So you're basically. It's not fake it till you make it, but you're basically holding on for dear life.
Yeah.
In a complete moment of sheer terror.
Yeah.
And hoping that everything works out.
Yeah. And that whatever talent you have at that point kind of
shines.
Yeah, exactly. Takes the wheel.
Right. And it worked. But yeah, it was scary. It was scary. But, at the same time, looking back, the guys were so accommodating.
Yeah.
And they were just complete gentlemen, complete professional. And, they were just, hey, relax, breathe.
Yeah. On the technical side of things, that, because you're still auditioning for that job, what are they looking for in their engineer? Like, how do you pass that test?
That's something that you probably have to ask them. At that time, I think they were looking to make sure that somebody was dialing in the tones that they're used to.
Yeah.
Because one thing I did notice early on, the minute I got the gig, was that the performance live needed to sound like the record. And if you ever went to a Pink Floyd show during that tour, holy shit.
Yeah.
The performances sounded like the record. And, we had all the logs and all the sheets from the original recording sessions, and we were trying to dial in the reverbs and the delays and everything as close as possible to replicate that ambience, because to them, it's all about perfection. It wasn't about, oh, let's just go do a tour. At least this is my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
To me, it seemed like it wasn't about just let's go do a tour and make a shitload of money. So it was like, yeah, let's go do a tour, but let's make sure that we're giving our fans and our audience what they're used to when they listen to our record. So they wanted their tours, and that they wanted that performance to be as close as possible to the recording.
In which album were they touring?
This is the Division Bell record.
Gotcha.
94. Yeah.
Wow.
So it had two names, Division Bell / Pulse.
Yeah.
And that was intense.
Wow.
That was really intense.
Yeah, so at that point you're auditioning for probably a world tour.
Yeah, it was a world tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that when I was done and finally their manager, God rest his soul, Steve O'Rourke, came to me. He goes, so what are you doing for the next 3 years, lad? And he just gave me, he goes, do you have anybody in Miami? Because it was funny, talk about how small the world is.
Yeah.
Steve O'Rourke at that time was when we started talking, we realized that we were living that far apart from each other. He lived in Bal Harbor at the time in Miami.
Wow.
And that was like maybe 5-6 miles. I was living 6 miles away from his house.
That's crazy.
And it was such a small world. So he kind of took a shining to me, but he was the kind of guy you didn't want to fuck with, though.
Yeah.
This guy had been managing the band since 63, I think, or 64.
Wow.
And, he was one of those proper British guys who was sweet, but at the same time, you didn't want to fuck with him because he will cut you. It's like, I learned pretty quick. They told me, if you ever wake up in your hotel room and you go out your door and there's a plane ticket stapled to your door, that means you got fired. I was going, holy shit. There was no words.
Yeah.
There was like, if you open your door and there was a plane ticket stapled to your front door of your hotel room, you had just gotten fired. Go home.
Yeah.
Because he didn't talk much.
Wow.
He didn't talk much, but boy, he commanded.
Yeah.
He was a commanding presence, but at the same time, a very gentle, gentleman, and knew the business, was there to get everything done for the band that the band needed.
Yeah.
you know.
Wow. So that first audition ends up going well.
Yeah.
How do you find out? Like, what is the moment that you find out?
It was 2 days after the audition. I get called in, and that's when he calls me back to the production office that was set to the right behind the stage where we were rehearsing. He says to me, "So, what are you doing for the next 3 years?"
Wow.
I was like, "Okay."
Wow.
And so
As simple as that.
went home, took the contract. I looked up an entertainment attorney, and by then I knew some people, and I gave it to them. That looked it over and said, "Man, 23, this, go. You know, they're like, go. You know,
Yeah.
so hardest thing to do was convincing my mom. I'm leaving for 3 years, Mom. Doing what? I'm going to be touring with a rock band. I don't want you getting into drugs. You know, typical Cuban mom. I said, Mom, come on.
Yeah.
You know, but that was the hardest thing was convincing my mom that I was leaving for 3 years.
I mean, that's crazy though, because now it's like, you know, bands are touring sometimes only 3 months.
Yeah.
But a 3-year tour, and obviously Pink Floyd is a huge band at that point, but that
Yeah.
still seems so much longer than what the tours are now.
Well, it's basically 2 years and a half, but there was also some external gigs that were not on that tour that we were playing as well.
Yeah.
So, that was pretty insane. What we would do is I think it was 2 months on, 1 month off, 2 months on, 1 month off.
Wow.
And sometimes we were playing at the same venue for multiple nights because it was a huge setup.
Yeah.
I mean, this stage was gigantic.
That's crazy.
You know, this stage was designed to look almost like the Hollywood Bowl stage.
Yeah.
And it was just in the PA system and everything. We carried everything.
Wow.
We didn't do backlines at cities. We carried our own sound, our own lights, our own everything.
So
was
those load-ins are insane.
insane. Sometimes I think it took like a week to set up.
Oh shit.
And yeah, and there was 2 identical stages leapfrogging. So when we were playing the Rose Bowl here, I think the next stage was actually being set up at Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe.
Wow.
So they were just leapfrogging.
Wow. So they would set up. So they're rolling with 2
identical sound systems, 2 identical stages, and they were just leapfrogging.
Holy shit.
No, it was a big production.
I mean, those shows have to be massive. You, again, are so young. I mean, what is it like managing that size of a setup? Is it going, you know, you start in those hip hop gigs and now you're in this massive rock setup. Like, who's teaching you this shit?
You know, I was learning on the fly, dude. It was just, the cool thing about recording is that I've noticed, you know, I started noticing at that time was that the fundamentals are, whether you're on hip hop or rock, are the same. Gain staging, get your gain staging right. You're usually not going to get in trouble. You know, the thing that I had to learn rather quickly, which I already had some background on due to the situation of doing the reggae festival, was mic placement. Mic placement will kill you if you don't know what you're doing. So, you know, luckily for me, when I got to the audition, the mics had already been placed and all I had to do was push these faders up and go.
Yeah.
But I was already mature enough to realize it's like, okay, that's usually how they do it. And I mentally made a picture in my head of what it sounded like and what it looked like. And then from there, I started adjusting and working on it. But the thing is that with players like that, they play so well and they know how to hit their instruments so well. David knows how to play that guitar so well that their tone is just perfect. So you can literally go eeny, meeny, miny, mo and be within the proximity of the instrument and you're going to get good tones because those guys are such great players.
Wow.
And that's one thing I realized as I got older working with bigger bands when I was with Fleetwood and, you know, and other bands, is like mic placement. You get the mic within the vicinity of a great player, you're gone. You know, just recently, about a couple of months ago, I did a session where I produced a record and I brought in Steve Ferrone. He was a good buddy. I love that guy to death. And it's the type of guy who comes in and always gives you 150%.
Yeah.
You know, you got all the takes and he'll go, Les, just roll me back. And I'm going to give you an extra take and I'm going to give you different fill going from the verse to the chorus and from the bridge to the outro. And you're like, I already got it. I'm just going to give you something different. And you're like, who's going to argue with Ferrone? Let him do it. Yeah. So I hit record and he'll do something that all the other previous takes were amazing. But this one has magic, right? And you're going, okay, never get in the man's way, right?
Yeah.
But again, like with the guy with Ferrone, you put that mic on that snare anywhere within the vicinity and man, that thing's going to sound amazing.
Wow.
Kick drum's the same way. The way he tunes his kick drum, the way he hits the kick drum, man, he hits that kick drum.
Yeah.
We actually sometimes have to put a cinder block in front of his kick drum, even here in the studio, because he hits hard.
Really?
Yeah. So we actually do have a brick around here, a cinder block that says Steve Ferrone emergency brake.
That's hilarious.
We put that in front of his kick drum because, man, that dude can hit.
No shit.
But some guys hit and the drums don't talk. They just feel naturally compressed. A guy like Ferrone hits, and when he hits those drums, they talk. and you're going, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when Grohl was in here and I got to come in and see Grohl in here and he was playing. And he's one of those guys too. He hits those drums hard, but they talk. And then there's some drummers that hit hard and the drums just,
I know exactly what you mean. I'm always,
You know?
that's my favorite thing to listen to on
Yeah.
records is drums.
Yeah.
And the one thing I noticed is like how, because you're not playing that many different variations of the same kit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But how can it sound so different with certain drummers?
dude, it's just the feel, the way they play. I mean, listen to those Tom Petty records with Ferrone on it. And it's just like, God.
Yeah.
You know, Last Dance with Mary Jane and all that stuff from the Wallflowers, you know, Wildflowers, that record. Fuck, man, you know, it's just magical. And then
Wow, is he one headlight?
no, he was no, that's
Do you know-
Matt Chamberlain on that.
Yes,
and
that's
that's
what it
another
was.
monster.
You know what the snare crack I'm talking about
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
opening part of that song. Yeah.
Chamberlain's a monster, dude. You know, I haven't worked with Chamberlain, but just watching that guy and listening to him play, and you're going, yeah, that dude's insane.
Yeah.
You know, you can just hear it and you can go, yeah, that dude's a player, man.
Wow.
You know, and there's players that play and do the thing, and then there are players that come in and play and they leave a pint of blood out there because they're playing, they're giving it to you, and they love being out there. And so, you know, having those guys come in, it's always a treat.
Yeah.
And then now, as I've gotten older, I've learned to enjoy that more.
Yeah.
Before, like I said, I was white knuckled. Now it's just like you get to hang with the guys, you get to shoot the shit with the guys. Like with Ferrone. Ferrone and I will have lunch twice a month. We'll go have barbecue. We'll just hang. And you know, that's the beautiful thing of this to me about the industry. It's like you get to make friends with guys that are amazing musicians who have played on some of the most magical, amazing records on the planet, but they're also fucking amazing human beings. And you become friends, and you know, and then they teach you things that you didn't know, or they teach you things that you kind of knew, but now you know how to focus them,
Yeah.
and make them bigger and better. You know, so when you work with guys like that, that's I think the magic for a guy like me, that you get to see somebody of that level and that caliber play, but they also are able to go, oh, hey, you know, this and that and this, and you learn from them a lot, man.
Yeah.
I can't say that I've learned everything on my own. I've learned a lot by watching, but I also have learned a lot from the friendships I developed with these guys, because you see them play and you know, like Ferrone, hey, I'm going to give you an extra take because I think I'm going to give you a different fill there. And I'm like, well, the fill I got is fine. But to my ears and to the musician's ear, the artist's ear, it's like, oh, it sounds great. But Ferrone is 10,000 miles ahead of us. So he's like, I'm going to give you a different swing on that, coming out of that verse into that chorus, and I'm going to make that chorus jump. And it's not a massive change. It's just the way he just leans into that fill or rolls the toms or
Yeah.
whatever he does, you know, and you're going, yeah, it's some magic. Whatever he did there is magic. Leave it alone,
Yeah.
you know.
Wow.
And that's the magic.
Do you think those type of guys, like, what's your experience been? You know, because obviously these guys are getting older now.
Mhm.
Is that a dying breed, those types of musicians, or what is your, you know?
It's funny you said, no, actually, I think there's more of a need for guys like that. There's some really good young guys that are coming up that are definitely, they got chops, man.
Yeah.
But a guy like Ferrone, I'll tell you a quick story. I was doing a punk rock single for an artist in here, actually in this room. And he wanted to get Travis Barker to play. I said, well, I don't know anybody in Travis Barker's camp. So if you know anybody, go for it, you know? And he said, well, I don't know anybody either. So I go, well, look, I can get you Steve Ferrone. And the first thing he said, he's like, well, don't you think he's a little older, you know? And he plays just kind of rock. I said, bro, you don't know. So he's like, he finally, the artist's like, all right, well, we'll give him a shot. I was like, all right. So we bring Ferrone. We set him up in here. And cold. Ferrone had just gotten off the tour. I think I forgot who he was touring with. But anyways, he literally got off the plane, and a day later he was in here with me. And he sets up his drums, never heard the track, tells the artist, all right, let me hear it. And hit him. I hit the playback. He starts listening to the track. And I just went out there and I said to him two things. I said, Ferrone, New York, 1970 neo-punk. He goes, all right. And the artist is sitting back there, and the artist is just like, you know, trying to be too cool for school. And I hit play, and Ferrone just leaned into this thing, dude, with a punk rock thing.
Really?
And then just like the artist just literally got up, he goes, holy shit. I go, told you. I said, told you, man. I said, you can't never knock experience. No matter how old these guys get, these guys were there. I mean, Ferrone at the time, I found out later, he told me the story. He goes, at that time I was living in New York. So I was not in the punk scene, but I knew about the punk scene.
Yeah.
So I can play it if I wanted to. I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a big learning thing for the artist where he's like, yeah. I say, yeah, don't judge a book by its cover. The guy might be older, but he's played on some of the biggest records in the world. You don't think a guy like that has tricks up his sleeves?
Yeah. I think that's where my question is like, artists today, not everybody has the budget to be in a room like this. So then you think about the players and the access, what they're able to learn and experience. Is that, if that's minimizing, are you going to have still a lot of these great players, to pick from?
No. I mean, hopefully some of the new generation would step up. And like I said, there are some good drummers and some good bass players that are coming up that are young. But, one thing I have noticed, and not to shit on anybody, is that a lot of the young guys can't hang when you're like, a lot of rock bands, for example, some of the rock bands I've been producing lately are like, we want to record on analog. I'm like, that's fine, but do you know how to record on analog as a musician? Punching is different. Everything's destructive. It's not like Pro Tools when we can make a playlist and keep going. So you got to make sure that you know how to punch in. So if I tell you I'm going to roll you back 2 bars or 4 bars, and we're coming in on the top of on the downbeat, you got to be able to just hang in there. And
it's already stressing me out. I'm like, I don't.
So a lot of the younger rock bands, they're like, yeah, we can do it. And they sit there and I go, okay, rolling back, play, and then I roll back 4 bars and I'll hit it, and they'll sit there quietly. Where a guy like Steve Ferrone will start playing the minute he hears the playback, he'll catch in and start playing, and then that punch is seamless.
Yep.
So I have to tell the guys, no, the minute I start playing tape, you got to catch up and start playing with what you did before, so that way when I hit record and punch you in, it's clean.
Wow.
So they don't have those chops, and they have to develop them, but a lot of them are really, really down to like, okay, I'm going to work on that.
Yeah. And
they're really receptive. Some are like, oh, it's too much work, we're doing the next one digital, which is fine. Pro Tools is great. But there's some guys that are like, nah, that was kind of fun. It was kind of manic for a second, but once we got the groove, we'd do that again. It's a learning curve. It's like everything, man. It's a learning curve. Even for me, punching on analog, I have to be a half a beat ahead and just come in right, where I'm supposed to. Whereas with Pro Tools, I can just, I didn't catch it on time. I can just move the boundaries and align it, and I'm good.
Which do you have the most fun recording?
Oh, analog.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck yeah, analog, man. A really good drum set with a good drummer, or just a fucking good rock band, or a good artist. It doesn't have to even be rock. Any artist who can really hold their own on analog, man. A vocal on analog from a good singer on a great microphone in front of this room, going through this console.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Killer.
Oh man, it just makes your hair just stand up on end. It's just the coolest shit ever.
That's awesome.
And we could do that with Pro Tools, but we do have to put more work into it.
Yeah. To make it sound that way.
Yeah, we can do it, but then at that point, then I'm reaching for EQs, and then I'm reaching for the LA2As back there, or the 1176s, and then, the chamber just to get more air behind it and stuff like that. It can be done. And, Pro Tools is a good system, but naturally, I think you get instantaneous gratification on tape, where you hear it, you play it back, and you're like, oh, fuck yeah, that sounded exactly like it felt out there.
Yeah.
But again, it's a learning curve, and a lot of people are not used to learning how to punch on this thing or waiting for the tape to chase. And especially too, some of the sessions, like we did a session about a month ago, and it was 48 tracks. So it was 2 24-track machines slaved together.
Wow.
So you got to wait for the machines to chase each other, lock, hit record, and punch.
That's insane.
So it's a little time consuming, and it eats up the clock. And like you said, being in here, man, it's not cheap.
Well, everything you're saying, I'm thinking about the budgets in my head. I'm thinking about the time that it takes. But then something like that, when you're waiting for a machine to lock in and then you have to start playing, the quality of those players has to be extraordinary.
Oh my God, dude, they got to be so mentally fit.
Yeah.
They can be sitting out there going, how am I going to pay my bill? They have to be thinking about, okay, I'm going to hit this G chord now.
Yeah.
That's where they need to be.
Yeah.
And not only hit the G chord, but hit it with the intensity or the deliverance that you're looking for.
Yeah.
You got to perform it.
Yeah.
You're just going to go G chord, I'm done. No, you got to just lean into it. Do whatever that song is calling for.
That's what I mean. You have all these separate things going on, but then you're a player in that room and you have to lock it in, get the take, but also play the take with feel. So how can you feel anything other than like stress and anxiety in that moment. You know what I mean?
You know, it's like everything. You got to get used to it. You got to get used to it. You got to learn the process and learn the communication. You know, the communication's key in here. I mean, when as a producer, one thing you learn is like when you're with an artist producing a record, it's like a marriage.
Yeah.
You got to be able to communicate, say shit without being censored, and just, you know, because it's all for the benefit of the record. So you can't be cuddling or holding hands. You have to say it like it is sometimes. Sometimes it's rough. But it's all for the intent of like making the artist better, bigger, and better. And you can't do that if you're holding somebody's hand the whole time and going, "No, you're okay." It's like, "Nah, dude, come on. You can do the shit better. Hit it again. And we're going to keep hitting it until you get it right." You know, which in Pro Tools, most guys are like, "Oh, we got to just auto-tune it or just Beat Detective." And that's cool. I can do that, but I'd rather not. I'd rather you want to record, you want to be a musician, dude, leave, like, you know, I think Iggy Pop was the guy who said it best, leave a pint of blood out there. If you don't leave a pint of blood out there, you're not doing it right. So what are we doing?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at, is that the records that have been made with that attitude are the ones that have lived on for decades and decades.
Yeah.
But now it's like listening to the music. I don't know how you feel about, you know, even rock music that's coming out right now. It genuinely doesn't sound like that, and it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, man, I mean, there's a lot of really cool rock stuff out there, but yeah, it's missing something.
Yeah.
That's not to say that they're bad. It's just, you know, there's something, and I don't know if it's missing in the recording side or it's missing on the production side, because people are trying to. One thing I've noticed is lately is that people are trying to accommodate. They record records because, oh, that's what people like now, and I want to do that. Where back in the day, guys were like, "Fuck it, I'm doing what I'm doing, and if you don't like it, don't buy the fucking record." You know, but in the case of Iggy Pop, nobody knew what the fuck the guy was doing. Look at what he did with the Stooges, and look at what he's at now. You know, Pink Floyd. Nobody knew. Oh, prog rock. What the hell is this? And here comes Dark Side of the Moon. Goodbye. One of the biggest selling records on the planet. You know, and one of the coolest fucking records ever. I mean, if you listen to that, not because I work with them, but just genuinely, if you listen to the way that record's put together, you're going, holy crap. And every time you listen to the record, there's something new that catches your ear. And you're going, wait, I didn't hear that before. What was that? You know, Zeppelin's the same way. You know, and again, like you said, those are records that are still standing the test of time.
Yeah.
You know, on the other side of that too, you got Marvin Gaye. Holy shit. Come on. Etta James. Oh my God. You know, and then give guys credit where the credit is due. You go back even farther than that. Muddy Waters. Howlin' Wolf, and you go, oh my God. When you listen to those guitars and you go, that's where rock and roll came from. You know, when you hear those blues and you're going, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
You know, and the way that, it's like, how did they capture that at that time with basically no technology?
Yeah.
And those records, they might not be as loud as our records are today, but when you crank them up, holy shit, they feel good.
Yeah.
They feel good.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's where it seems that there's less of a pursuit for excellence. I feel like that's where it starts, but then you look at the industry and there's such smaller budgets, and there's more of a need to go quickly with things and get it out there. And then I have to take that, and then how does that translate to social media? So you have all these crazy things that are, you know, attached to making art, that it's kind of hard, to defend artists. I understand where they're like,
oh, absolutely.
Like I can't just go do whatever I want. Like it has to be successful or else I'm nobody.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people aren't looking, even yourself, right? Like I can't find anything on the internet about you.
Yeah.
But you just told me what it was like to tour at 23 with Pink Floyd. And I'm like, that's fucking insane. That's like way above whatever social media following somebody could have, you know?
Right.
So it's this weird, like I'm polarized if I'm an artist. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I wouldn't know what to do, you know? So I guess what would be your advice for somebody, you know, that's just starting out?
You know, first advice is be real, be authentic, do your own thing. And when you find what that thing is that you're looking for as an artist, don't copy anybody. Yeah, it's good to copy because you get some good ideas, you know, and everybody's copied each other in music, but copy it, but make things your own. Develop that skill to just like, oh, I got that bass line from the Beatles, but now I'm going to turn it into something different. It's mine and create my signature sound. And now I'm killing it.
Yeah.
So my first advice for any artist is be authentic, be unapologetic, just kick ass, man. Don't try to put yourself in a box because you want to please fans or you want to please A&Rs at a record label, do it and they will come. Just be authentic. And I guarantee you people will come. And then also on the technical side, yeah, being in a place like this, and to your point of like budgets and all that stuff, the first thing you do, rehearse until your fucking hands are bleeding. Because that's going to make you tight. That's going to make your band tight. So when you come in here, like right before we started the interview, you asked me about the new Grisfolk record I worked on. And those guys were so tight, man. Those guys came in the studio, and in a weekend, we had the EP tracked.
Wow.
Because the band was so tight.
Yeah.
Those guys came in and just like, boom, take one, and we would do 2 or 3, 4 takes.
Did you do it in here?
No, we did it in another studio.
Oh,
but
nice.
And we tracked it live.
Yeah.
We put everybody in the room, and it was like, take one, go.
Wow.
But again, those guys were rehearsed. The songwriting was great. So they just came in and just like, boom, 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 boom. And we're setting them up, knocking them down, even the assistant in the studio was like, holy shit.
Wow.
But yeah, I tell the bands and any young artist, just rehearse, man. Don't depend too much on that technology. Don't depend too much on auto-tune. Yeah, it's cool. It's a great effect sometimes. And I'm not anti-auto-tune. It's great. Yeah, we want to add some auto-tune and add some effect to it. Fucking A, great. Another paint on the canvas. It's awesome. More tools. But don't make it a crutch.
So I want to hop back into your story.
Yeah.
So you do those 3 years with Pink Floyd.
Okay.
You're 26 at that point.
About, yeah.
Something like that.
23, 24 around there. It was really young.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you finished that tour. Are you getting calls at that point?
At that point, no, I went back to Miami, and I realized that at that point in Miami, there's really nothing going on.
Yeah.
So I just, on a whim, just literally picked up and left. Everything I had, I was in my apartment. I literally either gave away or put on the curb and said free shit on it. I put a sign that said, I remember this. I put free shit. Couch, beds. I didn't give a shit. I was just like, boom. I grabbed my suitcases, flew out here, and then stayed with a friend of mine who is a big actor. And I'm not going to say his name, but I stayed at his house in Playa del Rey, and for about 3 months until I got my own place and all that stuff. And then yeah, I started getting gigs here. I started doing stuff. I did some stuff for Dionne Warwick and stuff like that. And then I ended up, in 2002. This was when I got off tour with Floyd was 97. I got here end of 97, beginning of 98.
Wow.
So it took me and then I was doing some smaller stuff around here. Actually, one of the first gigs I had, I forget the name of the artist, but here's the coolest thing though. The bass player on that session was Mike Porcaro from Toto.
Wow.
And that guy, dude, was the coolest motherfucker on the planet. God rest his soul. It's one of those guys that you miss, from the heart.
Yep.
Because the guy, I remember I was working in the studio, and the producer was just an asshole that was working on that record, and he was writing me for no reason. And Porcaro looked at him and goes, yo, man, he's doing a great job. Let him do what he's doing. Just worry about the music, all right? So Porcaro stood up for me, and then he came over. He had his bass literally sat right next to me at the console. He goes, listen, fuck him. You do what I tell you to do. Punch me in when I tell you to do your... And that was the rest of the session. The producer was completely iced out.
Wow.
And from there on, it was like, I love that dude. I was like, fuck, Mike is cool, man. And then when I heard he got sick, that broke my heart. And then when I found out he died, I was just like, fuck. But that guy, man, he left a big mark. Because it was just the way that he didn't play the Hollywood game. He's like, yo, the engineer's doing great. Leave him alone. What the fuck are you nitpicking shit?
Yeah.
And he just came and sat next to me. He goes, you're doing great. Just follow me.
Wow.
And I'm like, all right. And we just, from there on out, we clicked.
Yeah.
And I stayed in touch with him until he got really sick and stuff. And like I said, that was one of those times where it literally broke my heart.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like a point to make is you started in a studio, then you spent years on the road in the live world, and then you went back to the studio. Yeah. That's, I feel like, not the normal.
It's not the normal, but boy, did you pick up some chops.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you feel that the live, like being on the road, doing the live stuff, how did that translate to doing studio work?
It actually leveled me up because then it worked on some bands. It didn't work with other bands. But one thing it did work was the fact that when I would mix like I was mixing a show. So the record sounded like a live performance.
Yep.
Right. And that's when I started going, shit, we should start tracking bands live too.
Yeah.
And it helped my chops because then you were, a lot of the rock bands were hip with that, and they were like, oh yeah, we want this rawness yet polished. It was kind of polished and raw at the same time, and it's got this push of energy that we would get in the live performances, and we like that.
Wow.
But some other artists were like, no, it's just too aggressive, back it down.
Yep.
And so you had to find, you had to find your way, and you had to find where the personalities were.
Yeah.
So some artists were like, no, it's too aggressive, back it down. Those drums are just too banging, bring them down. And I'm a drum guy.
Yep.
I love tracking drums. So yeah, I had to kind of find my way. It was kind of tricky, but the live thing helped because, yeah, you learn how to go, okay, well, I know that drummer's out there, and I want this record to sound just like the show.
Yeah.
And if I'm producing it, I know I want it to sound like the show. Yep. So then I take it to the edge.
Yeah.
And if I'm not producing it, then I would discuss it with the producer and go, hey, do you mind if I do X, Y, Z? And the producer's like, yeah. Or, no, it's too aggressive, just middle of the road.
Yeah.
But at least you gave them the option.
Yep.
Because as you all know, a lot of producers are not engineers.
No.
Like Rick Rubin will tell you, he's a great producer. He doesn't know how to touch a fader.
I didn't know that for the longest time. And that's when I started to realize that there's these separate, groups of people.
Yeah.
But you seem like you've kind of progressed to do everything.
Yeah, and I got lucky, and I think that came to fruition watching guys like the Floyd, watching guys like all those reggae artists, and you pick up those chops along the way where it's just like a snare is not a snare. Depends on how it's tuned. Depends what kind of snare they're playing. So you can't always put the microphone in the same position. They're different.
Yeah.
And it also has to do with, like I said earlier, how that drummer's hitting. So, most people are like, oh, this is how you want an open snare mic. And I laugh when I see those things. I'm like, bro, first of all, you don't know what kind of snare that they're playing.
Yeah.
You don't know how the drummer's hitting that fucker.
Yep.
And you know how he has it, tuned. So that microphone that you see on that tutorial goes out the window. That's a basic fundamental thing that really has no basis in reality of what goes on in here or on a tour.
Yeah. Yeah, not to get you to shit talk anything.
No, I'm not talking shit talking.
There's a lot of whether it's recording school, there are courses that you can buy online. What I found from talking to people like yourself is that there's a very big gap in between those two things, the real experience versus, but then the question is, okay, if you're one of those kids coming up, I get why they go to the school or they buy the course because they're trying to learn.
Yes.
I guess, what do you say to that young kid of like, to get his chops? Because it doesn't seem like you had a specific mentor, that there was just one. It was almost like everybody is teaching you.
Yeah. It was basically, how they say it takes a village.
Yeah.
Literally, I was raised by a village of just great freaking musicians, and I was lucky enough to be in those situations.
Yeah.
Even with the Floyd, and they knew I was green, but they didn't cuddle me, but they would guide me.
Yeah.
And when they needed to kick me in the ass, they did. And I was like, man enough to take it. But yeah, to come back to your question, I think, look at those courses, but don't make them your Bible. Those are good fundamental starting points that, some of them are great. Some of them are like, wow, when I see them, I'm going, what the hell? But it doesn't matter. The thing is, at least you're getting some basic fundamental idea. And then the next step you should take to any young producer, engineer, whatever, and then just practice until your freaking ears bleed, and move microphones around, depending on what your friend, and let's say you have your friend playing in your garage, fine, get that 57 and move that thing around, put it on the top, put it on the bottom, put it on the porthole.
Yeah.
Try it out. That's how we all learn.
Yeah, it almost is like use those things to, you described when you showed up to that stage, the mics were already placed or whatever. That's like that's where they go. But then you hear the band play and you realize that there's a certain feel to everything that no fucking course is going to tell you, like, how to really capture that.
No. And I mean, the only thing that the courses will teach you, which is the main fundamental cornerstone of the whole thing, is gain staging. If you get the gain staging right, you can pretty much get away with murder sometimes. But yeah, gain staging, mic placement. Those are the two things if you're going to be working with any band. Even on vocals, people think you just put a microphone and it's sitting there statically and somebody's going to sing. It's like, no, as producers sometimes we have to tell the artist, back up.
Yeah.
Or sometimes we have to tell, like, an artist, depending on the message you're trying to get across. It's like, okay, now on the chorus here, I want you to get close to the mic, and I don't want you to project so much. Now I want you to be very airy. So get close to that microphone, you know, and learn how to use the microphone. And I'm not a fucking singer. I don't know how to sing, but I know what proximity does to a microphone.
Gotcha.
Depending on the singer.
Yeah.
So if you have a powerhouse out there who's just belting it all the time, it's like, well, you know, it's like getting hit with a hammer all the time.
Yeah.
But then it's like, you know, well, as a producer, what I'm looking for is to create dynamics.
Yeah.
So, okay, yeah, you hit these verses and they're hard. Okay, let's get these choruses where they're hard, but at the same time, they have some subtleties of softness on it. So we'll double a softer vocal behind it with a more airy vibe. And then now you're up close to the mic. Or we'll switch out the mic and go, now we're going to put you to sing on a ribbon mic.
Yeah.
And a lot of singers don't know how to sing on a ribbon mic because they haven't had that practice. And with a ribbon mic, proximity effect is a big deal.
Wow.
So you have to, as a producer, you got to pick all that shit up, dude.
Yeah.
You know,
I already hearing you talk. I'm like, this is why a lot of music sucks right now. Is because
I
know,
sucks.
dude, some of it is just not the music that I'm listening to has been made years and years ago. Probably same, you know, with yourself. It's just like I don't think this level of care in the recording is being put into those records. And I'm like, how do you? And I know that it goes back to the fact you can't go sell 1 million CDs and have the label reinvest $1 million into your next record because it takes time and it takes, you know, care and affection, the whole deal.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I hope that's where it gets back to.
Yeah, you know, it's true. And a lot of artists are, you know, like you said, being in here is an investment.
Yeah.
It's like almost buying a house, man, with you don't know how it's going to return.
Yeah.
So it's scary. It's scary for anybody. It's, man, you know, but the thing is that what are you going to do? Walk through life and be scared all your life? Or are you going to take a shot? I'm the type of guy that I always wanted to take the shot. I end up homeless? Fuck it. I know how to make money again. No problem. But you have to take the shot. Because if not, then what are you going to do? Play guitar in your garage all your life or sing karaoke or sing with different bands at different bars all your life? Nothing wrong with that. But if my opinion, if music is your life and that's what you are really passionate about, then fucking go for it, man. Yeah, it's scary as hell. Yeah, you're going to have to spend a grip, you know, but you know, the alternative is you're going to be working a dead end job for the rest of your life going, oh, I could have been, I could have, should have been. And it's like, fuck that, man. I say go, you know, and you don't need to be in a place like this. I mean, there is a need for this, for a place like this. This console, that room is acoustically made for the room. So the minute you put drums out there, it's musical. You know, they track orchestras out there for movies and stuff, but we do a lot of independent records in here as well. And for me, when I'm producing an independent record is, let's rehearse the shit out of the band before we get into the studio because we don't have time to fuck around at $25, $26, $3,000 a day. And that's just the studio cost. It's not my cost as producer, engineer, and mixer.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be blowing anybody's money. We want to make sure that we maximize the money, save the budget, so that way there's money left over in the budget to put it towards marketing through, you know, digital media, whatever the hell you guys need to do to get your music out there. Because at the end of the day, that's what it should be about. It's like, yeah, we can create a good record, but if you don't have a backup plan of how you're going to release this record, then what's the sense of making the record?
Yeah.
You know? So, and a lot of artists need to be reminded, it's like, look, this is cool, but you need to know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. One of the, when we spoke on the phone before doing this, you instantly go into this, you know, kind of explanation of recording Teardrop with Massive Attack. And I'm like, again, had no fucking idea. Yeah. It's like Evan sent me, oh, Les is the man, like you should interview. And then we start talking about that. So it's like, where in the story does that come?
That was between Two Live Crew and Floyd. Floyd was 94. So no, it was right after, I think. God, I think Massive Attack, that record, I can't remember. It's just jumbles up.
Yeah.
But anyways, that was another learning experience because those dudes were so far ahead of their time in the crafting of that record that to this day I still use some of the techniques I learned from them. Just the layering process to create sounds that to this day sound better than any drum sounds. I mean, you still listen to any Massive Attack record. And again, they might not be super loud compared to today's records, but when you crank them up, man, you feel it. You feel those 808s, you feel those 909s, you know, you feel the analog bass lines that they dropped in layered with synth lines, and you're going, oh my God. and most people don't have that knowledge, so people are just like, it sounds great, it's a great sounding record.
Yep.
It's like, well, it was a great sounding records because those guys were just doing stuff that now we just do with just one finger on Pro Tools.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
back then those guys were layering shit, and you're going, oh, 5 kick drums to create one sound, 6 snares to create one snare sound. But when you heard it playing back through the speakers, you were going, oh, it was literally moving the air in the control room.
Wow.
And that was just like, that is insane. And again, too young to appreciate, because those guys were just so far ahead of their time
Yeah.
that you're constantly having to catch up to them.
Yeah.
And I still, to this day, the stuff that they're doing, they're not doing much, but the stuff that they do, you're like, they haven't changed the formula because it works.
Yeah.
It's all about crafting, and they didn't care how long it took to create. It's just like, we got to create it our way because this is our vision.
Yeah.
And they knew their vision very clearly. It seemed like they knew that this is the sound we're going for. So this kick does this kick does that, this kick does that. And now it's going to be one kick sent over here. And you're going, holy shit. It didn't make sense at the time.
I feel like maybe that's something that's lacking a ton with younger artists, is that a lot of artists that I see, they'll let the audience or they'll let fans or whoever tell them or dictate what they should do, because they're almost afraid, if I go too far out into this, right field or whatever, they're not going to be accepted, or they're not going to have that viral, song or something like that. And it seems like with what you're describing, there was such a vision and such a decisiveness that
that's what it is.
That's,
you nailed it. It's being decisive.
Yeah.
Being decisive and just going for it. There's a saying that I've heard Rick Rubin say, but it comes back goes way back to one of the guys that I looked up to in the music industry, Ahmet Artigan, founded Atlantic Records.
Yep.
He's a guy who founded Led Zeppelin, signed Clapton, Etta James. And, and I used to think that this was a weird quote. And he goes, don't worry about the audience. They don't know what they want. Just give them something. The listener doesn't know what they want. And I was like, that's kind of a bullshit quote, because the listener's the one buying the record. But as I get older, you realize that people really don't know what they want. And you know why I say that? Because people want you to sound, it's like, oh, well, you're a rock band. We want you to sound like the Killers. The Killers are fucking awesome. I work with the Killers. Love those dudes. But they got it cornered. They got there before you, and they're kicking ass. You don't want to go against the Killers. Why would you? They're going to kick you in the ass. Yeah. Brendan and those guys, they'll kick you in the ass. So why would you want to be the Killers? So don't listen to your audience, and just, again, like you said, be decisive and have the conviction to just create your own thing and go and do your thing and let people gravitate to you.
Yeah.
By putting up great shows. When you show up, don't try to be too cool on stage. Just go out there and fucking rip the stage apart.
Yeah.
Kill it.
Yeah.
Same thing with your record. When you're in here, rip it. Rip it, man. We're in rooms like this, and look at all the arsenal. Look at all the stuff we have at our fingertip here.
Yeah.
Why would you want to do something that 21 Pilots did or the Killers did? Those are great fucking bands, and they're cornered. They got it cornered.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Just take some of the stuff that you like from them, and now make it your own.
It seems like that's what it is. There's a fear. And that's the thing that prevents you from getting to the place that's pure and that's like the artistic freedom that made all the people, that came before fucking awesome, is because they didn't give a fuck. They were just like, this is me. I hope you accept it. And if not, go fuck yourself.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's like putting a question to you. Wouldn't it be scary all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to do a record, and we go through the budgets, and even on the low end, if you want to do a competitive record, even at an indie level, to compete against the market that's out there right now, you're easily going to spend 40 to 50K. That's scary as fuck, dude. That is scary. So you can't come in a place like this or hire a producer and come in half cocked. You got to come in swinging, because it's 50K. It's a lot of money.
That's what I mean. And I think about all the artists that I'm in conversations with, not one of them has 50K right now.
No.
So it's like, if you're them, I see, why they feel the way that they feel, or where that fear as to who they should be comes from. Because if you see the guy in the cowboy hat or whatever that has that hit song, you're like, fuck it, maybe I just put a cowboy hat on and I can go get to that point, and then maybe I have 50K and I can make the record. But that is where the art falls apart.
No, but here's the other side of that.
Yeah.
The cowboy with the cowboy hat that has a hit, guess what? Was done in a room like this, either in Nashville or here in LA or in New York. They spent the bucks. You know, and you hear that all the time. It's like, oh, you know, a lot of hip hop guys and blah blah blah. It's like, nah, man. You know, Frank Ocean was almost spent a year in a room back here in Studio 5 doing Blonde.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, you think those guys are doing hit records in bedrooms? No. You know, and even you know, so the argument at that point is like, well, they had to start somewhere. It's like, yeah, they started somewhere. They're doing either mixtapes or whatever. But then when they had something that they thought was tangible, guess what? They hired a good producer, hired a great engineer, went into a room like this, and they killed it.
Yeah. It's like,
that's the reality.
It's knowing when to hit the gas, and you have to truly believe in it. And that's where the risk comes in, of being like, okay, I know that I might be homeless after this, but I'm willing to take the shot because I don't want to be 70 years old and being like, I fucking wish I took the shot.
Yeah, dude. And listen, I've been there as a producer, as an engineer, where I've had dry seasons, and you know, there was a time, you know, that I had some personal stuff go down where my dad died, my mom had a stroke, her insurance at the time dropped her. I had to pay out of pocket for her treatment. Dude, I was going broke. Wow. I literally ate fucking peanut butter sandwiches and McDonald's for like a year and a half. Seriously.
I don't want to laugh at that. That's a fucked up situation.
You can laugh at it because I laugh about it. You know?
It's crazy.
Dude, no, it is. It was looking back, it was a funny situation and kind of a, you know, tragic in a comedic way.
Yeah.
Because I was working, I was making money, but the money was going out
flying out the door.
Flying out the door just to keep my mom alive and get her the right treatment and all that shit, right? So I know what it's like, man. You know, and even today, man, sometimes I make a shitload of money, sometimes I make shit money. At the end of the day, I'm happy. As long as I can pay my bills, man, fuck it. Yeah. You know, fuck it. Have fun. I'm enjoying it. You know, I don't have any kids or any of that shit. So I'm like, I have the luxury to just go, okay, I'll take less on this gig.
Yeah.
I'll work a better back end. Let's make things work. If I see something that's lucrative and I see that the talent is not afraid, because why am I going to take a chance on you if you're not going to take a chance on yourself?
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
So if I see an artist that comes to me and they're like, yo, man, you know, I'm going for the fences. Fuck this. You know, like some of the people we know that are beginning to just track. Yep. And it's like, all right, I got your back. Let's go do this.
Yeah. Does that excites you?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you be excited?
I do. I hear those conversations and it's like, I'm not even in the room and I'm stoked. You know?
You know, and you get an artist that comes to you and it's like, hey, you know, we want to do this. And I don't, you know, money situation's tight. And it's like, all right, let me hear what you got. And then you go see them perform and then you see what they're beginning to do. And you're going, all right, let's go do this. Let's go do this. Let's put a band around you. Let's get the paperwork done. And let's go fucking swing for the fences and let the chips fall where they may. Fuck it. And if they work out, great. If not, hey, you took a chance.
Yeah.
You know, at least I got my bills paid. I'm good. And hopefully this thing will just turn around and just become a banger in a couple of months or a couple of years or whatever it takes. Because sometimes a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people think artists come out of left field and they're huge.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not the case. You know, more often than not, those artists have been playing that song, recorded that song years ago. And now you're just hearing it because they got the right money for marketing or the right record label picked them up. And now that record's out there. But, you know, I've heard records that I did and I'm like, man, that was 3 years ago. What the fuck? Yeah. And now they're on the play, you know, now they're being played and you're going, awesome.
Yeah. I think that's where like the modern consumer thinks that film and music are different, but it's almost the same. You'll shoot a movie and it won't be 2 years until you see it in the theater or something.
Oh yeah, easy.
It's kind of, I mean, a great art, I guess at the same level. It's like you have to put a ton into it and then it takes a while to get it to where it has to be.
Absolutely. You know, and then the other side of that too is, you know, when you hear from great artists and we can't do that anymore because like you said, budget restraints and all that stuff. But you know, like those artists would go and record and re-record the songs over and over again. Never be 5, 6 different versions of the mix laying around.
Yep.
You know, like with Petty, I heard through the grapevine that Petty had like 6 or 7 versions of Running Down a Dream. And they were all great. You know, and the same thing with Pink Floyd with Money. Apparently there was like, you know, 12, 13, 14 takes of different mixes of Money that were just amazing. But there was that one that ended up being on the record that everybody's like, that's the shit. You know? But we don't have that time to experiment anymore due to budget restraints.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I have a home studio too, which is not as big as this. And I have a console, I have some analog gear. And it's just to be able to facilitate that where when I work in my deals, it's like, we'll do the mixes at home and we'll keep trucking them until we get that mixed.
Yeah.
Where you're happy, I'm happy, it's banging, we're good.
Yep.
You know, because you can't do that here. Here you got to come in and you got to, like the mix I'm going to do today, I got to dial that shit in quick.
Yeah.
You know, make sure it's banging on those speakers and it's banging on the NS10s, and then we go do the car test, because we still do car tests.
Yep.
And then we'll go, okay, we're done.
Yeah.
It's a good deal.
Yeah.
But you have to be dialed in.
Yep.
Dude, you know, that's not reality. It's like, no, it is reality. You just have to, in my opinion, you have to make reality your own.
Yeah.
You have to own it.
Yeah.
You know, my best friend said something to me one time. She's an actress, she's a big actress. And she said to me, you know, you're in control of the world you create, but you have to create that world. And that means go for it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And she's become big by just going for it, being unapologetic. And she's one of the biggest actresses on the planet.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where I've taken my cue about all this shit, watching, and yeah, that's all bands. But it's, you know, look, it's hard, man. It's frightening for a band.
Yeah.
Come in here, it's like fucking $2,400 a day plus the producer. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That's
Daunting.
It's daunting, dude.
Yeah.
You know, it's daunting, but you got to go for it, man. So anyways, back to what you were saying.
No, yeah. I mean, that's what I'm fucking saying. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is we're on the phone before this, and you're like, yeah, when I was recording Stevie's vocals, I'm like, I only know that there's one Stevie. And I'm like,
Stevie.
what the fuck?
Oh. And you know, I'll tell you a cool story about her here.
Yeah.
That was really cool. But yeah, going back to that, I had been working with Lindsey Buckingham on his solo record, and it was with Ken Calais, who originally produced all those records, and Richard Dashit. And we were working at the studio in the Valley. And man, we had been working for probably about a year on that record, his solo record.
Yeah.
And I think he was going to call the record Gift of Screws or something like that, right? And Lindsey's a cool motherfucker. I mean, the coolest thing, I'll tell you, this is the coolest thing that happened, and I'll come back to the Stevie. The coolest thing is one day, so Richard Dashit and Ken Calais, they were at the console, they were discussing the song that Lindsey was getting ready to lay down. And Lindsey's in the tracking room, and I'm miking Lindsey up with his acoustic guitar. And all of a sudden, Lindsey starts to play the intro to Gold Dust Woman. You know, dun dun dun, dun 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 dun. I'm miking him up, and I'm going, son of a bitch, how crazy is this? Here's the guy who wrote the song, playing one of the biggest songs ever. And he's warming up to it, and I'm miking him up, and I'm like inches away from him, you know? And he's just very casually just playing the riff to Gold Dust Woman, and I'm going...
What point is this in your...
This is about 2002 when I started working with... I just gotten here from Miami. It was like, I got here 98, 2002. I'm in the studio with Fleetwood Mac. With Lindsey, not
crazy.
Fleetwood. It wasn't Fleetwood yet, it was just Lindsey.
Yeah.
And cool motherfucker. I just... And he is another guy who's just at another level. Like one day he's like, well, you know, kind of want to create this big crescendo, but I don't want it to be on drums. Do we have an empty filing cabinet? I'm like, yeah, why? Let's just put the microphones in there and just bang on it. And I'm like, all right. So he put some microphones in this empty filing cabinet that was all rusted and shit. And I start playing back the music in his ears, and he's just going and creating all sorts of weird shit. And you know what? When we put it into the mix of the song, it sounded cool as fuck. But again, here's an artist who's miles ahead.
Yeah.
And you're going, he knows what he wants.
Yeah.
You know, and it's my job to execute what he wants. No matter if it makes sense to me or not. I just got to do what the guy says.
Yeah.
You know? And forget about him paying the bills. Just like, it's only wise to learn from a guy like that. Even though it might be crazy, you go, well, let me see where this ends up. It might be a new trick. Might be a bullshit trick. Who cares? Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I learned, it's like, yeah, that's actually kind of cool, LB. I always called him LB. And he used to call me Gitmo when he found out I was Cuban. He goes, Gitmo! I was like, oh, shit. So I'm actually in a documentary, actually a couple of years ago, a friend of mine called me, he goes, you know, you're in a Fleetwood Mac doc. I'm like, I am? He goes, yeah. Lindsey comes into the studio. He comes and hugs you. I'm like, he calls you Gitmo? What does that mean? I go, oh, my God. So I had to give him the background. It's like he found out I was Cuban. He was talking about when we started talking politics, about Guantanamo Bay and all that shit. So he started calling me Gitmo. I'm like... And some people are like, don't you think that's racist? I'm like, you can tell when somebody's being racist. Lindsey's just being playful. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
I don't take myself that serious.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so coming back to Stevie, halfway through that record that we were doing for Lindsey as a solo record, he says, we're going to stop for a couple of months. And we were working with him basically Monday through Fridays or Monday through Saturdays. The only days we're off were Sundays. And he says, we're going to stop for a couple of months, see what happens. And I didn't know what was going on. So then, like 2 or 3 months later, he comes back. He goes, okay, so we're going to turn this into a Fleetwood Mac record now. I'm going, what? Holy shit. So this is a Fleetwood Mac record now. And that's when they brought in Mark Needham, who, a great dear friend. I love that guy to death.
Yeah.
And I worked on with Needham on the Killers and all that stuff. And Needham, that's when they brought in Mark Needham, and he finished up where Richard Dashett and Ken Calais had left off. And I was on that as well. And I remember one friend of mine in the industry who said to me, be careful with Stevie. She can be a diva, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, well, whatever, we'll see. And, quite the opposite. Stevie was the sweetest thing I've ever seen. Yet, when she walked in the studio, she commanded the room. I mean, tiny little thing, but she was just like the presence. You're like, yeah, you don't want to fuck with her. She'll slice you. But again, the sweetest thing ever. So she comes to me, she goes, so you're my engineer? I said, yep. She goes, I only got one rule. I said, what's that? She goes, don't erase any takes. I said, all right. So started recording. It's like take 1, take 2, take 3, take 4, whatever takes it to. She usually nailed it within the first or 2 takes. And then the rest were just performance little things that she wanted to try out.
Yeah. Because
she's just so dialed in. And again, she knew what she wanted. So when she was coming in, she already knew. Boom. And usually by take 2 or 3, we were done. And then the other takes were just for her to just figure out different performances. And then we usually would live with performance 1 or 2.
Yeah.
All the way through. Or maybe, put that little vocal that I did on take 6, just put that little thing there and we're done. Because she was just so dialed in. But yeah, I remember, she came in, we had a Telefunken 251 up for her. And, I didn't even know that the microphone was set up so high. And Stevie with heels is maybe 5'4", 5'5". She's tiny.
Wow.
She's literally like a little fairy,
yeah.
And she just sits there. She goes, Les? I go, yeah. She goes, you need to bring the microphone out. I looked over and the microphone was just like up here on her. I was like, oh shit. So I go, oops, error number 1. So I come down, I bring the microphone up, I go, how's that? She goes, that's good, thanks. Walked in the control room, I go, here we go. Boom. And man, she was just, wow, doing takes. Fucking awesome. And then I was able to do, thanks to Mark Needham, because by that time Mark was working, I don't remember what record was working on. Mark's like, hey, can you take over for a minute? And Mark was actually recording a Christmas record with Chris Isaak.
Wow.
And Stevie did a track on that.
Oh, wow.
And so he goes, can you just do that? I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I jumped in and I did the Stevie duet with Chris for that Christmas record. And that was fun too.
Crazy.
Because that was another cool guy that with Mark I was able to do some work with. And Chris Isaak was just fucking cool dude.
Yeah. Just
nicest guy, very relaxed in the room, and the band too, Kenny and all those guys were just awesome,
Yeah.
and Herschel, and they were all great guys. And that was fun. But Stevie was like the shit, dude. That was so much fun with Stevie.
Yeah.
And here's a funny thing. So one day I had just finished producing a record. I was in Studio 2 right behind this room. And I was outside in the main lounge and I'm just filling out my invoices, getting ready to do my thing. And I'm just literally cooling down. I didn't want to go home yet. It was like 7 p.m. I'm sitting out there. There's a big throne out there. And I'm sitting at the throne, had a beer, and I'm doing my shit. And all of a sudden I hear, Les? And I look up, and it's Stevie. I go, holy shit. And I hadn't seen her, dude. This is probably 12, 13 years since I had done that record with her. She's like, Les? I'm like, Stevie? She's like, oh my God. She comes over, gives me a hug. And we're out there talking. And I go, what are you doing here? She goes, oh, I'm in Studio 3. And I'm not going to say the artist that she was with. She was doing a duet in Studio 3. And so we just picked it up, right? She's like, what are you doing here? I said, oh, I just finished recording a record. I'm done. I'm getting ready to go home. She goes, well, are you going to stick around for a little bit? I'm like, yeah, maybe. She goes, well, my manager, Cheryl, is in the lounge. And so is my assistant, Karen. I knew them all from working so long with her. Come on, let's go and say hi to them. So I'm like, sure. So we start walking to the lounge, and I'm talk about sticking your foot in it, dude. Stevie, when I was recording Stevie, she had this cute little dog called Sulamet.
Yeah.
And this little dog was a little ass in a good way.
Yeah.
Like if she didn't like you, she wait for you to walk away, and she'd come and nip at you and then run away, right?
Yeah.
She was the cutest little thing. So as I'm walking with Stevie, I go, hey, how's Sulamet? She goes, she died. I'm going, oop. Just like, fuck. I haven't seen this woman in 13 years.
First thing you start talking about is her dead dog.
I start talking about her dead dog. I'm like, foot and mouth, fuck, right? So we walk over to the lounge, and I see Cheryl, and I see Karen, and just great people. Picked up with them right where they, where we finished off, 13 years earlier. And Stevie's like, well, I got to go back and hit these vocals, but come and say hi before you leave. I'm just like, say goodbye before you leave. I said, sure. So about an hour and a half later, I'm done. I was relaxed. I'm getting ready to go home, and I knock on the studio door. They open the door, and they're like, come on in. And she's finishing her vocal run, and she stops the take. She goes, is that Les? I was like, yeah. And she's like, don't leave. Hang on. I'm going to do one more take, and I'll come out. And so she did her take, came back out. She goes, you leaving? I said, yeah. She goes, what are you doing next week? I said, what's going on? She goes, I'm doing the Hollywood Bowl. You want to come? I'm like, sure. She says, Cheryl, hook him up.
Jeez.
And that was the last time I saw Stevie. I haven't seen her since.
Really? What a trip to remember. I mean, that must mean you left some sort of lasting impression. Right?
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was really cool. And that's what I was talking to you about. I was talking about earlier. Is like, sometimes you make those connections, and they don't seem like connections right there and then, but then you bump into these people randomly, and they still remember somehow, some way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool, and I love that. That's one of the things that I do love about this thing that we do. Yeah. Some people are just super cool like that, and it's like,
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, 13 years, and then she's all of a sudden, we picked up right where we left off, and she's like, want to come to the Hollywood show? Very matter of fact. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, definitely.
And, Cheryl's like, yeah, we'll take care of everything. Will be a will call. Don't worry about it. It's taken care of. I was like, shit, how cool is that?
That's great. I mean, I don't know where to go from there. I think, I'm most curious after hearing all these stories where you go from there, because it's like, you have this crazy history, all of these amazing artists. But then to the day-to-day, what are you looking forward to most? What are you in search of? What's the next 10 years of your life?
Oh man, like? 10 years of my life, I want to die with my boots on behind a mixing console. Creating music. Fuck that. That's a simple one. And hopefully have a happy family to come home to.
Yeah.
But what I'm looking for, man, like I told you earlier, I want to be able to find an artist who's just going to be unapologetic. Like one of my favorite people, Joan Jett.
Yeah.
Just unapologetic. Oh, women can't do rock and roll. Women can't do punk rock. She's like, watch me. Hold my beer, motherfuckers. And look at Joan. She's just like, I love Joan, and I want to find somebody like that. I hope that, and that's the thing about this business. There's thousands of artists out there. But, it always comes down to the one who wants to distance himself from the pack, him or herself from the pack, and go, I'm going to do this shit. And I don't care if you buy my records. I'm just doing it because I want to do it. So I want to find that artist who's just going to bleed, who's going to be unapologetic, going to do their own thing.
Yeah.
And it's going to, as a producer too, is going to give me the freedom to help them in that process.
Yeah. It seems like there's more people like yourself than young artists think that are looking, that are still hungry. I don't know. I've talked to enough people that are still looking to give everything to what's next. Because I think a young artist, a lot of the time they think like, oh, I need to find somebody who's right next to me to do this next record, rather than looking to the people who maybe have done it before.
Right.
And that could be, well, how do you feel about it?
Man,
you would say that there's not that many people.
No, I think there are guys that are out there, but the problem is that the younger guys are probably, in my opinion, sometimes are looking for let me work with this producer because he has 10 Grammys or 4 platinum records. And most often than not, those guys are not going to be beneficial to you.
Yeah.
As a young artist, because they already have a formula, and they're going to want to make you part of that formula.
Yeah.
And sometimes that might work for you. Sometimes it might not. But, and there's nothing wrong with being one of those guys, by the way. It's just that those guys have a way of working, and they have their thing, and they're going to try to mold you to do that thing because that's what they know how to do, and they've had success doing it. So is there anything wrong with that? No. But as a new artist, why would you want to be put into a box?
Because you're immediately out of the gate going to go right into that formula, because they're like, oh, that'll just be Grammy 11 or something like that.
Exactly, where you should go, well, fuck it, I'm not going to go for the Grammy right now and think about long game. I'm a long game guy. Yeah. I like working. That's one thing I've learned. It's all long game. This is not about, If you're going to hire me because I'm going to help you get your music licensed right away, or I'm going to get you into the record label right away to meet an A&R, I'm not going to be your guy for that. This is long game, because what I'm going to bring to the record label is something that I know that it's leaving no doubt. But at the same time, if you want me to bring something to the label that's going to leave no doubt, then you're going to have to give me the freedom to do that, and we can't do that in one night in this room.
Yeah, because your name's on the line at that point too. Because
Well,
you're also making a statement as much as the artist is.
Exactly. But a lot of guys think that, well, we're going to come in here and we're going to have all these players and it's going to be amazing right off the bat. It's like, no, that's not the way it works.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works, but it's only maybe a fraction point.
I mean, that's not the thing to wage your bet on. Is
No.
like, the immediate thing, the perfection. You're lucky if that happens.
If that happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes too, I'm a big fan of unperfection, meaning sometimes the errors are the cool shit.
Yeah.
Like on Creep.
Yep.
That guitar that comes a bar head. It's like, that was a mistake. Led Zeppelin, where that punch in on when the levee breaks and you hear the hi-hat go, psst,
Yeah.
but it's cool as fuck.
Yeah.
So all those things, I think the magic is, to me, the magic about making music is in the imperfections, not the perfections. None of us are perfect. Go back and listen to the Beatles. Go back to listen to Floyd, Etta James, Marvin Gaye. If you put auto-tune to that shit, they'd be all over the map.
Yeah.
But fuck, the way they were telling you that story, the conviction in the way they were singing, the emotion, everything, there was no doubt that those were great records. Now, if you were to measure it up by what we do today and putting auto-tune on this and Beat Detective that, they'd be all over the map. I mean, if you listen to Marvin Gaye and all that stuff and you start at BPM and the band starts to drift, but the magic is that the band is drifting as a unit. It's not the drummer going too fast and then the bass player lagging. Now everybody's doing it as a unit. And Marvin is just trucking right through them. Same thing with the Floyd. You put a metronome to anything on the Floyd and it's just like, it starts to drift after a little bit, but the band is doing it cohesively. And they're concentrating mainly on what? The performance. That's what they're concentrating on. Gilmore, David, David, Nick, Rick, Roger back in the day when he was with the band, they were concentrating about the performance. And when you listen to the records, you can hear it. It's like, this is a performance. This is not about being technically perfect. Hendrix, man, listen to Hendrix. All over the fucking map.
Yeah.
But boy, that felt good.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that felt good. And I think we're missing that. I think everybody's too caught up on like, no, I want my vocal to be perfect. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
Why don't you concentrate and just fucking give me a performance out there? Make me fucking believe the story you're telling me. Let me get my goosebumps.
That's the thing. Make me believe it. That's like what's missing. Because to make somebody else believe it, you have to believe it. And that's where maybe the disconnect.
Yeah. Yeah. And even when you bring in players to play with, like when I work with independent artists and they don't have a band and it's like a singer-songwriter or whatever, and you bring in like Ferrone or Nathan East or Hal Cragen from Iggy Pop on bass, or another good buddy of mine who's a great bass player that I actually like to drop on rock records sometimes. And even though he's an R&B guy, my buddy Courtney Leonard, who plays with Beyonce, so it's like, hey, Courtney, you want to play rock? He's like, yeah, all right. And here comes Courtney, and he's been playing R&B and gospel all his life, and all of a sudden you got him interpreting rock and roll, and all of a sudden it's like, that's cool, because he's got a different flavor.
Yeah.
And you're like going, you got a rock guy on drums and a R&B bass player playing rock, and that dude is just doing something different, and you're going, that's cool as shit. So those are the magic things.
Yeah.
But again, it comes down to the artist being able to give you that freedom to go, yeah, let's do that. Because then some artists are like, no, but I still want to sound like, like that guy. I still wanted to sound like Travis Barker on drums. Travis is fucking awesome, but he might not be your drummer for this.
Yeah.
So, Ferrone, I don't know, that guy seems too old. Hold my beer. Ferrone goes in there and does this 1970s punk rock New York thing, and the artist's jaws just hit the ground. He's like, oh, holy shit.
Crazy.
So stay out of the way, but be involved. You know what I mean? And what I mean, stay out of the way, it's like, don't stay out of my way. No, I want you to be in my way. Stay out of your own way. That's the most important thing. A lot of artists, in my opinion, get in their own way. And it's like, no, man. Get out of your own way. Let the music do its thing. And let the players do their thing. But of course, put in some input, because this is your baby. Put in that input, guide us in the right direction, and then we're going to make it bigger and badder for you. And if we make it too big, then we'll pull it back. Tell us. But don't get in your way and say, I want to sound like Ariana Grande, if you're a female singer, or I want to sound like Stevie Nicks. Why? Stevie Nicks is already Stevie Nicks. You're not going to compete against that. Fuck that. Why would you want to? She's going to kick your ass. So do your own thing, man. That's the thing to everything. Just do your own thing. My opinion.
Yep. Let's leave it there.
Cool.
I'm down. Thank you so much for letting us do this.
Get a
Thank you to
beer.
Kansas. Yeah, exactly.
No, I can't. I got to work, man.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
I got to work.